Part 29. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 282. Snap. A little spark appeared in front of Jiayan. Finally, under the gaze of his compound eyes. Boom. A huge explosion sounded in this space. At this time, this metal monster suddenly turned into a ball of flame. The huge explosion was deafening, and Jiayan, who was very close at hand, was surrounded by this ball of flame. However, unlike ordinary metal monsters, the power of this metal monster's explosion is not to kill the enemy, so its explosion power only looks more powerful, but it does not have much lethality. When the flames dissipated, the giant mosquito's body gradually appeared as a shadow behind the flames. His compound eyes are brighter. The way to deal with these metal monsters has been found. His speed became even faster. At this time, the metal monsters surrounding Jiayan were no longer chasing the big mosquito unscrupulously. They seemed to have higher wisdom, knowing that the big mosquito had understood them at this time. If his weakness is caught by him, it will most likely result in an explosion. This weakness of theirs is actually a design flaw, and this flaw is inevitable. In the Asta civilization, although their combat machines have certain combat capabilities, most of them are still compared. At the low end, because they need to control costs, this kind of metal monster seems to be more powerful than those on the Earth, but their cost is only about 15 times that of those mining metal monsters. You must know the difference in the cost of this worldly affairs, but even Jiayan has almost no way to deal with them. This shows how powerful this metal monster is. There is no way to make metal monsters like this on the Earth, because although such metal monsters are not too difficult to make, they still cannot be made by the machines of alien civilizations on the Earth. But now that Jiayan has discovered their weakness, these metal monsters are no longer difficult to deal with for the giant mosquitoes. Click. Jiayan's 6 long legs stomped hard on the ground. His body moved forward rapidly under the tremendous power. The short space not only limited him. In fact, it also limited the hiding space of these metal monsters, so he exerted force and immediately got close to an enlarged version of the metal monster. The barrel of the gun was pointed at his compound eyes, Jiayan's compound eyes. It reflects the appearance of hundreds of gun barrels emitting red light. But at this time, the red light of this metal monster unable to send. Because before that, Jiayan had already stabbed hard with one of his front feet. Pierced directly into the open gap of this metal monster and penetrated all at once. This metal monster is indeed like the last one. A red fire burst out in the air, and then exploded in this passage. Big mosquito long before that. The figure has turned into an afterimage, and it quickly charges towards another metal monster. Not long after, another voice came out. Kill one again. In fact, it's that simple. As long as you find the right way, you can't defeat your opponents. It is not impossible to suddenly become easy to deal with. The remaining metal monsters retreated backwards one by one. They also seemed to want to retreat. If they retreat to the rear along the way and cooperate with the home field advantage, they still have a chance. But how could Jiayan give them these opportunities? He couldn't miss the good opportunity he had been waiting for so long, so his attacks became even more fierce. Moreover, the battlefield here was too large due to the large attack scene from both sides, causing Daphne and the 2 humanoids on the other side. The mechanical battle is not going smoothly. That happened when Jiayan blasted a metal monster into the air and at the same time pierced the gap under the opponent's gun barrel directly. This structure was the result of the metal monster having to make it here in order to reduce costs, and it after being destroyed, there will be an explosion. The metal monster exploded hugely in the air while flying towards the battlefield over there. Daphne and the 2 humanoid machines over there were also fighting fiercely at this time, and their fighting power also caused a temporary impact. In balance, there is nothing anyone can do about it. The metal monster in the explosion caused damage in terms of strength when it passed by. It flew towards a humanoid machine. This machine wanted to attack Daphne, but the remains of the metal monster flew towards him and he could not. No more hiding. Before that, he had a tacit understanding with another humanoid machine, which was to attack Daphne at this time. However, he could not attack at this time, and another humanoid machine attacked Daphne at this time. His movements were not very smooth, and as a result, Daphne seized the opportunity and dodged in the direction where the other humanoid machine was going to attack. At the same time, she reached her right hand to her back, quickly put the pistol back into the holster, and pulled out the dagger that had been stuck at her waist with her backhand. This dagger is obviously not a simple thing. When it was pulled out, a purple brilliance appeared, with a purple streamer on the surface, like lightning, very dazzling. Her toes were a little bit on the ground, and her slim body swung in the air. Instead of retreating, she moved forward, and slashed towards the humanoid machine whose attack had no effect. The humanoid machine in front was in a state of failed attack at this time. He was originally going to encircle another humanoid machine, but the other machine was blocked by a metal monster that Jia Yan smashed away. Only attacking one side, Daphne naturally dodges to the other side, and her dodge has a slight turning angle. She directly uses this inertial power to spin back, stab down with a knife, and hit the abdominal position of the humanoid machine. The dagger with purple arc light is like an indestructible weapon. It pierced the machine's belly with a knife, slashed diagonally, and a series of streams of light appeared, reflecting the scene at this time like a purple battlefield, extremely dazzling. But for that humanoid machine, this was no fun. Its body was chopped into two pieces in less than a second. Bang! The two parts of the machine hit the ground quickly, and the upper and lower parts emitted arcs of destruction, and weird sounds continued to pop in the air. Seeing this scene, the other humanoid machine stopped attacking, and instead swayed and disappeared into the passage behind. The battle on Jia Yan's side has also come to an end. Big Mosquito's combat effectiveness is fully demonstrated at this time. Although his biggest advantage, that is, flying, cannot be displayed, his strength and defense still lead the world in this battlefield. Moreover, he has discovered the weakness of this enlarged version of the metal monster. Their cheap attributes have determined that although this metal monster has very powerful attack power, after someone found the flaw in his barrel, he came to Shiyuan it is still extremely easy to break through their defense. But in fact, this is not a problem with the design of this metal monster. They were not originally designed to deal with such a powerful giant mosquito monster. More often, they serve as long-range attacks and covering attacks with numerical superiority. In that case, even if you know their weaknesses, it is unlikely to attack their bodies. This is like the guns on Earth. Everyone knows that just cutting off the shooter's fingers can stop their attack, but who will do it? So Jia Yan was able to do this not only because of luck, but also because of his own strength, not to mention that he also used his own brainwave power to block the attack of the red liquid. Daphne was not seriously injured. After seeing two family monsters fighting with Jia Yan, she took her dagger and suddenly took a step forward, killing a metal monster that was relatively close to her. Cut the leg into two pieces. Jia Yan also happened to stab the last metal monster with its forefoot into the gap in the opponent's gun barrel, killing it. Jia Yan's compound eyes shrank slightly when he saw Daphne using the dagger to stab the metal monster that he couldn't kill with all his strength with his forefoot, easily cutting it in two. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 283. However, he quickly relaxed his fear. He had long known that these aliens were impossible for him to deal with now. In other words, he never thought that he could perform well on such a battlefield. Effect. He had already built up a lot of confidence by killing those metal monsters. Even at this time, when he saw Daifune displaying a weapon that far exceeded his attack power, Jia Yan did not feel discouraged. He just desires his own growth even more deep in his heart. He wants to be more powerful, so powerful that he can easily kill these metal monsters. So powerful that you are not afraid of the weapons in Daphne's hands. It is even so powerful that it can roam unscrupulously in the vacuum of the universe. That's right. Just become a starry sky beast. At this moment, the big mosquito, who has been on the earth and has not had a very open field of vision, has a huge goal in his heart for the first time. This goal is extremely clear. That is to continue to become stronger. So powerful that it became the extremely feared starry sky beast in the so-called imperial literature. In the past, Jia Yan didn't know what the road ahead was. Now, after coming to the universe and seeing these alien civilizations, he knew that he was still not strong enough. Now he could only deal with those metal monsters at best. It's just the mining robot in Alien. He is not willing to accept this intensity. So he wants to continue to grow. Thinking of growing up, he clamped the pieces of paper in his wings tighter. Perhaps Daphne didn't expect that her act of helping would actually strengthen the idea of the mosquito continuing to grow stronger. Of course, it doesn't matter even if she knows. As far as she is concerned, there is no creature in this universe that doesn't want to go further on the road of evolution, and an evolved beast wants to be powerful. That would be more normal. This was the first time she knew that Jia Yan was such a weak evolved beast. In fact, when she was on Earth, she felt that this weak evolved beast could serve as her fighting power, and such a weak evolved beast. She can almost kill anyone she wants, whether in heaven or on Earth. Facing the giant mosquito with obvious flaws, he and the Asta civilization can actually easily kill the giant mosquito, but if its combat effectiveness, after being used by one of the parties, with a little help, his intimidating power should not be underestimated either. If Jia Yan were to attack the space by himself, the Asta people would have countless ways to prevent this big mosquito from even getting close to the base. But under the leadership of Daifune, Jia Yan's combat effectiveness was amplified. Although he is still alive now, which is a bit unexpected, he will still have such good combat power to use in the future. Daphne is naturally happy. You surprised me, Mr. Giant Mosquito. Let's go, maybe we have won more than half of the victory. Daifune smiled sincerely. This was the first time she showed such a smile to Jia Yan. This was a smile that recognized Jia Yan, and it seemed that she was a little satisfied with Jia Yan's knowledge. After all, if another person, even herself, was coerced into joining a battle that seemed to have little to do with her, there will definitely be all kinds of dissatisfaction, and it is inevitable to be passive and slow down during the battle. But this big mosquito seemed to be really fighting desperately. This was a sign of good sense in Daphne's opinion. After all, if the big mosquito didn't fight actively, she would have some influence. Daifune is satisfied, this is what Jia Yan wants. At this time, his life is still in the opponent's hands. So even if he has a little murderous intention in his heart, he won't show it. And at this time, he knew that it was very simple for Daifune to want his life, so he would not show any dissatisfaction. Jia Yan seemed to have been tamed and followed Daifune towards the front of the passage. Looking at the woman in front of him, Jia Yan's murderous intention flashed away. Daphne did not have this idea. In her opinion, no matter how smart the evolved beast is, it is still a beast-like monster. Even though the giant mosquito monster following behind seems to be too smart, she believes that this giant mosquito is still. I won't play any tricks with her, after all, this is just a monster. And with this thought, she didn't know that the big mosquito behind her had murderous intent on her. The two were like an owner walking forward with a pet, one behind the other. Jia Yan looked at the surrounding scenery from time to time. There seemed to be no other means of defense in this so-called base. When walking through a passage, Daifune skillfully turned a button behind the metal wall. When the button was turned down, Jia Yan saw a huge body appear in the passage behind them. It's that giant humanoid alien mecha. This mecha may have known about the failure of the battle in the base, so he immediately gave up the battle outside, entered the passage, and intercepted Daifune. It's extremely fast because of his breakthrough. In the space behind, the metal doors were destroyed one after another, and the vacuum was like a devouring beast, sucking all the air out to the outside world. Jia Yan also felt the huge attraction for the first time. Fortunately, he was standing near the metal wall. With a strong force, his sharp right front foot penetrated directly into the metal wall, and his body, which was attracted by the attraction, suddenly held on. And a metal door above the head suddenly fell down when Daphne turned the switch. Bang! When the huge mecha was about to come in front of the two of them, the metal door suddenly stood between the two. Jia Yan's body was only a few dozen centimeters away from the fallen metal door. When the door fell, he apparently heard a deafening sound. At this time, a deafening sound appeared on the metal door. A clear attack dent. Bang 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 bang. Loud sounds were heard in this place, and Jia Yan felt that his body was shaking due to the movement caused by the constant attacks. He looked at the door with some worry. The metal door that Daphne had been able to destroy easily before, he didn't think this mecha could not be destroyed. To put it bluntly, Jia Yan doesn't think he can fight this mecha. Maybe he is not on the same level as the opponent at all. But Daphne's words dispelled his worries. Let's go, there's another door ahead, we have a lot of obstacles. After finishing speaking, Daphne took the lead and walked forward. My aircraft has already invaded the control system of this base over there. The ridiculous Asta people have not changed their control system after 150 years. They deserve to be invaded by me. Daphne's words sounded a little smug. When they passed a threshold in front of them, another metal door suddenly crashed down. Jia Yan breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the mecha from behind didn't pursue him. As Daifune led Jia Yan, things similar to metal monsters kept popping up along the way, but with the joint efforts of Jia Yan and Daifune, they were all unable to cause too much damage without exception. Jia Yan felt that even if he did not appear, Daifune might not be so relaxed, but her attacks could still pose a great threat to the opponent, and maybe she could also defeat this. The purpose of the base may also be unknown. The two of them attacked at high speed and eliminated almost two groups of metal monsters, but something similar to a humanoid machine did not appear for the second time. The two came to a place that looked like a circular staircase. This is a deep space. Jia Yan and his two men entered the space from the highest point, so they were at the lowest level of the base. When they arrived at the circular staircase, they could look straight down. The stairs were nearly 200 meters long. They looked as if they were on the top floor of the Mitian building. It was very high. Naturally, Jia Yan didn't care about the height. He was just a little depressed. This base, which seemed to be only about 200 meters in height and width, didn't look very huge from the outside, but now it looks quite big. Where is the main control room? If we had to search layer by layer, this place would have at least 20 floors, so when would we find it? I think the winner has been decided, don't you? Oro. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 284. This humanoid machine seemed to have lost much power. A gap opened in his chest. In fact, something resembling a human figure slowly walked out of it. This is a character very similar to an Earthling male. He has handsome facial features, handsome appearance, and is about 2 meters tall. If he were a human on Earth, he would be a tall and handsome guy. But no one here thought he was a handsome guy, not even Daifune and Jia Yan. Jia Yan was a little surprised when he heard Daifune speak in the Chinese language of Earth. After listening carefully, he realized that this woman was not using her throat to speak, but using the power of her brain waves to transmit her words. What Jia Yan heard was Chinese, but after analysis, he found that the language was not really Chinese, but because of the special structure of his brain, he understood it and became Chinese. What is this all about? Maybe this is an advanced way of brainwave communication? Jia Yan felt that if he won this battle, he would need to ask Dai Funi for this method of communication. But now is not the time to think so much. The man looked a little thin, and his body was a little unstable. It was obvious that he had been injured in the previous battle. Jia Yan looked at Dai Funi beside him. This woman didn't seem very strong. Maybe she was the strongest among several alien civilizations left on Earth. Dai Funi, long time no see, I hope I didn't damage your car before. The man stepped off the humanoid machine. The machine behind him looked like a machine, but when someone stepped out, it was obviously an exoskeleton, a combat exoskeleton with alien technology. The so-called exoskeleton has long been used in the military on Earth, and a product developed by the Stars and Stripes has proven its practicality. When soldiers march long distances, they use an exoskeleton to assist with augmentation. When you act, your strength will be greatly enhanced. Moreover, endurance and physical fitness can be improved, so that this equipment may become a regular equipment of the Star-Spangled Banner in the future. However, this matter is uncertain. After all, these are the same concepts, but Jia Yan did not think of it. Here he saw a real exoskeleton. In fact, exoskeletons are the same concept as mechas in science fiction movies. In other words, the 6-meter-high thing outside may be the same thing as this thing. They are just different in size. But according to the distinction between people on Earth, one that is more than 2 meters tall may not be considered a mecha. The man emerges from his exoskeleton. The expression he looked at Daphne was like that of a longtime friend. Please don't worry, my aircraft is not broken enough for you to worry about me. Daphne slowly loaded the bullets of the pistol in her hand. This is something like a round bead. Haha, yours is not broken. Mine was badly damaged, and a piece of it was snatched away by Mr. Giant Mosquito. I'm lucky to have flown here, and it's still being repaired down there. The man shook his head with a wry smile. When he looked at Jia Yan's expression, he also looked a little angry. Does this involve me? Jia Yan glanced at the male in surprise. Then he realized that he was probably the owner of the flying saucer. Jia Yan fought with him several times on the Earth, and even snatched a piece of his outer skin from the tiger's mouth. But obviously this man just looked at Jia Yan and didn't really take the big mosquito in his eyes. Okay, Oro, you have lost. We have been fighting together for 300 years. I will remember you. Daphne pointed the loaded gun at the man. I lost? Haha, who said I lost? Did you already invade the signal base and know that our working energy here will not be usable within 2 months after your attack 100 years ago? What this man said made Daphne frown slightly. He was right. The reason why Dai Funi pursued her for hundreds of millions of miles was because he knew that the signal base of the Asta civilization had been transformed into a deformed place due to a joint attack by her and a representative of another civilization 100 years ago. It cannot be repaired for the time being, and it will take at least 2 months to send out a signal. Before their battle, the Earth had been completely blocked by their signals. During the battle, when his flying stick aircraft was attacked by the red light buildings of the metal monsters on the Earth, that was when the opponent's flying saucer flew out. After landing on the Earth, she could almost be said to have followed Jia Yan out with her front and back legs. The information from her invasion of the opponent's base shows that their base is indeed unable to transmit signals quickly, so she must have a lot of time to attack their lair at this time. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Dai Funi, you are really powerful. You were able to recover from such a disadvantageous situation, but you missed a little bit of calculation. Maybe this is the reason for your failure. The expression on this man's face seemed to have won the final victory, and he was very proud. At this time, Daphne's face also changed slightly. She guessed something. Bump. Before the man could continue to speak, the gun in Daphne's hand suddenly fired. A bolt of purple light shot out directly from her firearm. The man's voice stopped suddenly, and a circular hole appeared in the center of his head, and the hole seemed to penetrate from front to back. He was dead in an instant. Phew. The man was on the opposite staircase and slowly fell down the more than 200-meter circular staircase. Jia Yan saw that this man continued to fall under the influence of gravity. He flew over a distance of more than 200 meters for more than 10 seconds before falling to the ground with a vibrating sound. Perhaps she was feeling a little emotional about killing an opponent who had been fighting openly and secretly for hundreds of years, but after her eyes changed slightly, she rushed directly in one direction. When Jia Yan saw this, he naturally hurried to follow her. As a younger brother, he had to do his job well, otherwise it would be difficult for her to leave and forget him when she left. As for what happened before, he could also get some clues from the conversation between the two. He wanted to thank him sincerely. Their conversations all used the brainwave pronunciation method. This voice seemed to be able to automatically control all sounds. Converting it into a language that others can understand, Jia Yan suspects that this way of pronunciation is based on the principle of brainwave vibration, because the brain waves of living things transmit information in the form of electromagnetic energy. As for the principle, scientists and medical scientists have not figured it out yet. Perhaps these aliens took advantage of some commonalities in brainwave neurons to transmit information and developed this method of transmitting information with the power of brainwaves. Jia Yan still doesn't quite understand the specific possibilities, but this does not prevent him from being more interested in this method of brainwave sound transmission. He followed Daphne and sprinted all the way. This circular staircase has a total of 20 floors. Below the 20th floor, there is a huge space that occupies the entire floor. When Jia Yan and the others arrived, the male body on the ground was still lying there, has long since stopped breathing. And along the way, they didn't encounter any resistance. Daphne's face turned even more ugly. She didn't even look at the man lying on the ground, but she stepped in front of a huge broken thing. Jia Yan was also attracted by this thing. After looking at it for a long time, he finally discovered that this thing was the one he saw on the earth, which was the mysterious flying object, the flying saucer. At this time, the flying saucer was completely unrecognizable. The entire appearance had been dismantled and no longer looked like before. If it weren't for the general impression, Jia Yan wouldn't have recognized him at all. Daphne's face was ugly. She stepped forward and tore it apart with her bare hands. Even if the wreckage of this aircraft was damaged, its hardness was extremely terrifying, but when she tore it off, a corner of it was torn apart. Daphne touched the torn place, then shook her head with a wry smile. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 285. Let's go, Mr. Giant Mosquito, our mission has failed. I have to quickly return to our Empire's signal base and notify our exploration ship. Back here, Oro, this bastard, actually sacrificed his aircraft and the base's most of the defense equipment was pieced together to create this simple signal transmission device. No wonder I said why their base was so easily invaded by us. It turned out to be all an illusion. After Daphne finished speaking, she walked towards the top floor without stopping. It's not over yet, I just came down and went up again. Jia Yan looked at the towering stairs, surrounded by mosquitoes, and almost cursed. But Daphne said she wanted to leave. If she didn't follow him at this time, she would go up and fly the aircraft and leave. He would have no place to cry in the sky above Neptune. The two of them ran upwards at sprinting speed again. In fact, to put it bluntly, Jia Yan is still a little unclear about the situation. In the past month, he has been a little confused in the universe. One bad thing about his character is that he just goes with the flow, and when he doesn't understand the situation, he's not so smart. This is the current situation. Jia Yan took the aircraft in a daze for a month, then arrived at this place, and then fought such a fierce battle. He didn't even know where he won. Well, let's just say we won. And running up and down, the big mosquito felt a little confused. Perhaps this is because of the gap in levels, so big mosquito feels that things are not under his control, so his thoughts are a bit blurry. But he believes that he will definitely be able to intervene in such battles in the future, and he will no longer be a peripheral role, but the real core. Tap 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 tap. The footsteps of Daifuni in front, wearing what looked like combat boots, kept coming, always ahead of Jia Yan. They are all extremely fast, and their speed up the stairs is at least 70 or 80 meters per second. Daifuni is fine, but Jia Yan is a little uncomfortable. The big mosquito has rarely run so hard on 6 legs before. Just when they finally climb to the top of the 200-meter high floor without stopping. Boom boom boom. A loud voice sounded. The shock wave directly caused Jia Yandu, who had just gone upstairs, to take a big step back. A metal head appeared in front of him. This huge head occupies a lot of space in this place, and the body behind the head is also extremely terrifying. It seems that as soon as he comes in, he looks like Jia Yan. It makes the whole space feel small. His size is not much different from that of a giant mosquito, but one look at his combat power shows that there is a slight difference. This is the humanoid mecha from before. He is about 6 meters tall, and his equipment is compared to the previous 2 mechas in this small space. It seems more diverse, so there are gaps mentioned here. It's not that he is worse than Jia Yan, it's that Jia Yan knew at a glance that he couldn't be his opponent. Anyway, in this battlefield, Jia Yan knew that he was only a marginal player. It's just right for beating that kind of metal monster, no matter how strong this exoskeleton and mecha are. Let's wait until we become stronger in the future. As soon as this huge mecha rushed in, it hit Daifuni's body with a beating fist. Jia Yan was shocked. At this time, he didn't know whether he should help, although he felt that Daphne had a way to deal with this giant mecha on her own. From a visual perspective, the fists of a giant mecha were bigger than her body. It was so huge that he didn't know how Daifuni could stop it. But just when he hesitated, the fist had already struck down quickly. At this time, the big mosquito saw the woman Daifuni making a vigorous movement and jumped directly into the sky. In the blink of an eye, her palm gently touched the side of the mecha's fist, and she actually flew up in the air like a martial artist from the Earth's Waxia kingdom, using the strength of 4 or 2 to move 1,000 pounds. Not only the power of jumping, but also the power of the mecha's attack was used by her as the power of jumping. At this time, Daifuni seemed to be really flying. Although Jia Yan thought that his fighting ability was a little inferior to theirs, he was confident in his eyesight. So at this moment, he saw Daphne pull out the gun she had hidden behind her back in a smooth movement. That dagger. Then, under his gaze, he jumped towards the mecha. Click. The dagger emits purple light. In this light, the fist stretched out by the mecha has been dismembered into 2 pieces. Then Daifuni faced a beam of light from the mecha and charged forward. Red light comes. This woman seemed to be turning somersaults in the air very skillfully. After that, she avoided all the red light, then looked in front of the mecha's head, and stopped in a spin. Her delicate body has great strength and she looks heroic. You have followed Oro for 300 years, right? Now you can rest, she said lightly, and then stabbed with the purple dagger in her hand. Click, click, click. A faint crack appeared on the front of the mecha's head. Let's go. He may explode in 10 seconds. Daphne suddenly shouted and rushed forward without looking back. Jia Yan was still behind, watching this woman's smooth attacks with fascination, when he suddenly heard her cry, "A clever one. This mecha explodes in 10 seconds. Doesn't this cost your life?" Big Mosquito believed that the explosion of this 6-meter-tall mecha was definitely not comparable to that of the previous metal monsters, so after hearing these words, he was frightened and moved quickly towards Daifuni's back. "Go after it." Daifuni's speed is getting faster now, as if she doesn't want to wait for Jiayan. 10 seconds is not a lot of time for her. They have to be within these 10 seconds. Return the way you came. Then start the aircraft, and then directly move the aircraft quickly away from the place that is about to explode. In fact, Daphne knew that if the giant mecha exploded, it would also detonate the few power resources in the space. Although it was not much, it could completely turn the entire starry sky into a sea of fire, or would it? It can be done. So her speed was so fast that it almost never stopped. What is at stake at this time is not Jia Yan's character, but this woman's character. If she is a little bit unrighteous, she will directly start the aircraft when she returns to the aircraft over there, and then leave Big Mosquito, let him, this mecha and the base in this place become dust in the universe. 1 second. Jia Yan walked around the giant mecha. He didn't dare to look back and kick the half-broken mecha aside. His speed slowly increased. 2 seconds. His speed has increased to 100 meters per second. But in the future, Jia Yan's compound eyes were filled with fear. The place behind is already a passage with no gravity and no air. Daifuni in front has activated the special device in the combat boots under her feet. 2 rocket-like flames shot out from her boots. She was also extremely fast even in a place where she lost air and gravity, and might even be faster. But Jia Yan couldn't have such equipment, and he didn't know how to control his body when he was weightless. What to do? At this time, the Big Mosquito just felt anxious. It seems that this woman really didn't take me seriously. She just ran away by herself at this moment. Jia Yan looked at Daifuni, who lost her figure at this corner in an instant, and there was almost a look of despair in his eyes. No. There are so many dangers coming, how can I be defeated by this situation? He roared in his heart. Before leaving the gravity environment. Huge body power. It burst out suddenly at this moment. His 6 long legs kicked wildly together, and the moment before he lost gravity, he kicked the ground with all his strength. The metal floor was dented by the huge force of the mosquito. Bang! The huge body reached speeds above the speed of sound almost instantly. This explodes at extremely high speed. Almost in the blink of an eye, he hit the metal wall in front of him. Can't stop. Run for me. Dash, Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 286. Genuine subscriptions are still passing by. Please come to Cheateon.com to subscribe for genuine subscriptions. Thank you. Jia Yan's body had already adjusted its angle in the weightless air. When it hit the wall, its 6 long legs faced the metal wall. Sulfuric acid. Keep up the good work. Step on the metal wall. Huge explosive power, use it again. In a place without air, the sound cannot be transmitted, but it can still be seen how powerful the mosquito's step is. He continued to make a huge dent in the metal wall. Jia Yan took advantage of this reaction force to keep moving forward in the air. Extremely fast. I won't die. I've survived so many hardships. How can I die here? At this time, Jia Yan's heart was full of thoughts of moving forward crazily. Onward, forward, forward. Hurry up. Even faster. Boom boom boom. 5 seconds. We had already seen the aircraft slowly leaving the space. At this time, the gap he opened was closing down bit by bit. Daifuni was standing outside the metal gap, wearing a suit of combat armor and equipment. Her eyes were cold. Jia Yan felt a chill in his heart. The meaning of this look is not a good one. Sure enough, the 6th second came. The aircraft, under Jia Yan's desperate sight, slowly flew forward and away. At the same time, the sound from the aircraft also came faintly. "This is Daphne's voice. Mr. Giant Mosquito, I'm sorry. I thought about it. It is impossible for an evolved beast to become a friend of our empire, so I can only give up on you. In fact, if you can catch up with me, I may not break my promise. It's only my fault that you didn't keep up. Farewell." When the woman's voice finished speaking, she was in Jia Yan's desperate sight. The aircraft seemed slow. But he flew away quickly towards the distance at a speed that was impossible for him to pursue. 8 seconds. Jia Yan looked at the flying stick aircraft that had turned into a faint dot. There is a feeling of despair. This is the first time he has been deceived like this in so long since he was reborn. And before that, he actually vaguely knew that the other party didn't have such a good idea. After all, this Daphne had almost forced him to give in from the beginning. But even so, Jia Yan also had a great feeling of hope before, and this feeling gave him a little hope. I thought that Daphne would be waiting for me at the last important moment. But the result disappointed him. In fact, when he read those articles, Jia Yan already had a certain hunch, because even if he read any article, in other words, the textbooks used for studying were all revised by Daphne. But it still revealed that the empire she was in, and even most of the civilizations regarded the so-called evolved beasts as something that was not very auspicious. Evolved beasts are powerful, savage, violent. Therefore, none of these so-called civilizations regard it as a friendly object. However, what Jia Yan said in those articles was actually not the point. The point was that the evolutionary beast had the potential to grow into a super beast that could dominate the starry sky, a starry sky beast. It was this matter that turned the evolved beast into the public enemy of almost all civilizations. At least this is the case in the starry sky area where this empire is located. Although Daphne had no hostility towards Jia Yan before, she seems to have expressed her thoughts at this time. Kill the big mosquito. It can be said that he gave Jia Yan a fatal blow at the most critical moment. 9 seconds. Jia Yan looked desperately at the aircraft that had lost sight of it. He is still in a state of confusion until now. This time he was invited to the flying stick aircraft and to the sky over Neptune, which is far away from the Earth. He has always been a little unsure of the progress of the situation. After all, the whole thing is happening on the big planet. From the mosquito's perspective, it's a bit too sci-fi. He is now paying the price for his inability to adapt to the sudden development of events. Is this the punishment for not being able to respond immediately to emergencies? For 9 seconds, Jia Yan looked at the last glimmer of hope that was far away. He seemed a little discouraged. In the Earth world, he has survived one crisis after another, and survived one murderous intention after another. Even though he has grown from a little mosquito to this point, he finds that he is still a person being plotted in front of Daphne, who is known as the cosmic person. Just mosquitoes. At this time, he glanced behind him. The explosion over there seemed to be real. There was no need for Delphi to deceive herself about this matter. Half of the 9 seconds have passed. At this time, the big mosquito was standing on the top of a huge base 200 meters high. There is a huge hole here, and the big mosquito is standing in the hole. Behind him is a passage, and inside the passage, a burst of fire is shining. He seems to be a little resigned to his fate. The only regret is that I didn't die on the Earth. I don't know how far away from my hometown. I cannot be reconciled. Suddenly, the big mosquito roared angrily the moment the fire behind him was about to hit his body. He uses his brainwave power to make sounds to the outside world. But this place is almost vacuum, and big mosquitoes are floating here, but he didn't dare to go out before. He didn't dare to face this boundless deep space of the universe. Boom boom boom. 10 seconds are up. Huge explosions of flames were flying all over the sky in this area. In the distant space, in an aircraft flying at high speed, there is an electronic screen observing the scenery behind it. This is an existence similar to human women on Earth. She was wearing a combat armored suit, and in front of her was a wine bottle filled with red liquid. This bottle contained the oldest red wine from the Earth. For this woman, she was born on Earth and lived for so many years. She has had all the enjoyments on Earth. It seems that the power of this explosion is not as huge as I imagined, but it doesn't matter. Even if the base is not completely destroyed, it is almost there. As for that big mosquito, I think even if it doesn't die, it won't be able to survive in space. Come down. Daphne shook her head slightly. Although she successfully destroyed the signal base of the Asta civilization and even killed Oro, the representative of their civilization in the solar system, she was not happy at all. Being sent a distant interstellar signal by the other party is her failure. The so-called signal is actually not that simple to send. After all, the universe is really too big. If a signal is sent to a probe ship that has left the Earth for 300 years, God knows where they have already arrived. Even if the signal is sent with radio waves at the speed of light, what if they have left the solar system for several light years? By the time the signal is received, it may be several years later, and the dailies may be cold by then. For cosmic civilization, distance is always a problem that cannot be ignored, and it is always the biggest problem. Therefore, in terms of communication methods, through technological exchanges between civilizations, some higher-level civilizations eventually mastered the communication methods used by the previous signal base. If you can't break through the speed of light, go to Shiyu and then take a shortcut. The exploration ship that left before had space fluctuations along the way. This fluctuation cannot pass through huge things. Only some micro things can theoretically pass through, but it is enough that these micro things can pass through. In fact, there is no need to break through the speed of light, but to exploit the loopholes of the universe in space. That is, in the entire universe, space is not actually flat. Scientists on Earth have also concluded from observing the universe that the space in this universe does not have a symmetrical structure, but is like a bumpy paper with ups and downs, and if the shortest distance is passed between the ups and downs, at that point, theoretically, although you do not exceed the speed of light, compared to the light rays that travel long distances, you are faster than them. This is an alternative way to break through the speed of light. Compared to humans on Earth, cosmic civilizations have known this direction for a long time, and even used this theory in their technology during space navigation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bullet in You. Chapter 287. In units of things that are much smaller than quarks, the matter here is in a state of chaos. Their formation is only the most basic matter in the universe. They contain the most basic principles of the universe. There are space, matter, etc. everything, they are the real basic substances that make up things, and here is also the host of space. The cosmic civilization has very cleverly used the space principles of the most basic things, and initially used them in communication, so their communication speed can far exceed the speed of light. Perhaps a few light years away, with simple communication speed, we can reach it in less than half a month. Note, regarding the truth of the space theory here, the subsequent assumptions of cosmic civilization, as well as the assumptions of super-light communication methods and basic materials of the universe, these are all my personal opinions, please do not take them seriously. With such a fast communication method, Daphne believes that the exploration ship of the Asta civilization will arrive soon. So she is racing against time to report her findings. As long as she reports the discovery of astral matter and even helps the Empire obtain the right to mine astral matter on Earth, she will be the great hero of this incident. If that is the case, she may obtain the status of the Empire and become a true member of the Empire. Thinking of this, the woman accelerated the speed of the aircraft. As for the big mosquito behind, she forgot about it in an instant. They are all creatures that are about to die anyway, so what do you still remember to do? A huge flame exploded, shining brightly only a few hundred kilometers away from Neptune. This explosion was the explosion of the power system of a Wenzing civilization mecha. It is difficult to say whether Daifuni's hands or feet were involved in it. Moreover, behind the explosion, there was the 200-meter-high giant base. This base floating and sinking in the universe also requires huge power as energy, and the explosion of the mecha. It triggered the base energy, which was not very stable. Boom boom boom. In the deep dark universe, a huge ball of fire was shining, and in this ball of flames, countless fragments and rubble were splashed all around. They have great momentum and are still around the base. The machines in the battle were all affected by the huge explosion, and their defenses were extremely strong. But the whole army was still destroyed. One by one they exploded. And it is in this flame. A huge body was at the forefront of the flame explosion. Leap at an extremely fast speed. He was in the flames, and his whole body was burned by flames with a temperature of several thousand degrees. I won't die. I won't die. I made the right move at the last moment, I won't die. Body in flames. It was Jia Yan who Daifuni thought was very likely to die in the explosion. Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be able to survive in the vacuum of space. He was covered in flames. The intense high temperature burned the clot into coke in an instant, but the exoskeleton underneath the clot was still there. The azure substance that had spread all over his body narrowly resisted these flames. In fact, the current flame burning is already the best result. When 10 seconds were up, Jia Yan looked at the explosion flames coming from behind. At that moment, his innate desire to win suddenly defeated his idea of accepting his fate. After that, at the moment when the flames almost spread to his feet, Jia Yan felt as if he was possessed by the god of luck at this moment. While the flames had impact power, but the power was not enough to kill him, he used all his strength to jump towards the outside world with all his strength at that moment. This time's power is a jump when his desire to win is extremely strong. This jump not only contains his belief in survival so far, but also contains strong anger. He is not willing to die like this. No matter what, he doesn't want to die simply like this. If he dies alone in this place, who knows how far away from the earth, he will die with his eyes open. So at the last moment, his desire to win made him make an unprecedented bold move. Moreover, this move requires extremely quick judgment, extremely quick reaction, and even better luck. This time, he made the right bet. Just as he was leaping towards the outside world, the power of the explosion surged out quickly. Riding on the power of this raging flame, he broke through the speed that his own flight could not reach in an instant, and at this time, his body, although he was surrounded by huge flames, although he was in pain, and although he might be seriously injured, there was only one thing he knew. That means he's not dead yet. There is no death, even in the vacuum of the universe, there is still hope. He doesn't want to die. I won't die, I will definitely take revenge. I won't die, I will definitely not die. Jia Yan endured the severe pain all over his body. At this time, he looked at the flames around him, even his compound eyes seemed to be a little burnt by the burning force, but Jia Yan was still looking at the nearby scenery. He, absolutely, is right, no, give up. An object is approaching quickly in front. In fact, it is not that it is approaching quickly, but that a large mosquito is approaching it quickly. The flames around Jia Yan have been thrown out quickly. As for how far they have been thrown, God knows. The things ahead were approaching quickly, and Jia Yan felt cruel in his heart. All 6 of his long legs suffered huge injuries, and one of his middle legs seemed to have been burned. He hurts. But at this time, he had to bear the pain alone, and he could only save himself. Even if he died, no one would know about this big mosquito. But he still doesn't want to die. I am just a weed, but I will not give in. Even if I am a weed, I will grow into an ancient tree. I will live. Looking at the object that was about to hit it at high speed, Jia Yan's damaged compound eyes could hardly tell what it was, but he just knew that he couldn't just hit it directly. The force of the impact would be too great and he would die. I can't die, I can't die. I can't die. The moment before the giant mosquito was about to hit, a pair of forefoots that were not too damaged were struck hard at this moment. Click. The crisp snapping sound came to the tentacle ears. One of his front legs was broken. It can be clearly seen in the compound eyes that at this moment, his left front foot hit the nearby object hard. This object seemed to be a huge meteorite. When his front foot attacked this huge meteorite, he directly hit it. The surface of the meteorite was dented due to the attack. The reaction is coming. Jia Yan's left front foot was broken immediately. The huge attack power gave the giant mosquito a powerful rebound force at the same time as its body collided. At the moment of impact, due to the efforts of his front feet, he finally deviated a little from the track. However, the body whose speed was greatly reduced could not avoid another meteorite that was approaching at a very fast speed and hit it hard. There was no sound around, but Jia Yan seemed to hear the crisp cracking sound in his body. The tip of his slender mouthparts couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood-red blood at this moment. The big mosquito seemed to be attached to the meteorite. His 6-meter-long body sank directly into the meteorite. His breath was like a gossamer, no, but not breathing at all, because there is no air in the vacuum of the universe. He relied on his powerful breath-holding ability to completely suppress his breathing. The unprecedented injury made the big mosquito slump down. His compound eyes were almost burned to the point of being unable to see anything, and one of his front and middle feet was broken off. The internal organs have also suffered huge damage, and there are many hidden dangers. But at this time, the big mosquito looked at the dark space scene in front of him, and had a weird laugh in his mind. Ha 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 ha. I just said, I won't die. No matter what kind of desperate situation, I will never die. No matter how many times. No matter in the vacuum of the universe or in the underworld of hell. I will get up again and again. I will definitely not die. Unfinished. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 288. The incomplete compound eyes reveal an extremely strong sense of survival. Even in this desperate situation, he still wants to live. Even in this extremely despairing universe, on Neptune, which is far away from the Earth instead of the Earth, he still wants to live. Must live. Will definitely live. Will definitely live. The giant mosquito's incomplete but stronger-willed body began to move on this meteorite. It's so cold. Why is it so cold? Jia Yan felt that his back was extremely cold. This coldness completely covered up the warmth in his body even for a moment. This made Jia Yan quickly speed up his speed, legs and feet. As soon as he moved, he slightly broke away from the meteorite. However, he did not dare to completely leave the vicinity of the meteorite. He only left his body a little bit. He also used the knife-shaped horn of his right forefoot, which did not have much scars, to constantly reach out and hook the surface of the meteorite to ensure that he would not fly away. He couldn't fly in the universe. In this place, even if he fanned his wings, he wouldn't be able to move forward even 1 centimeter. If he dares to leave a solid body too far, he will be suffocated to death in the vacuum of space. The principle that flying creatures rely on to fly is to push the air forward. All the evolution of flight by the giant mosquito up to now is related to aerodynamics. In this space where there is no air, it is impossible for him to fly. If he leaves a solid body, he will just float in space without touching the ground. He will just wait to float in the air and be suffocated to death. Yes, although his ability to hold his breath has made great progress in several mutations, he is even sure that under extreme conditions, he may be able to do it without having to breathe once for a whole day. Of course, there are prerequisites for such a situation. The premise is that he cannot do too many activities that consume oxygen. But this time, his previous actions had consumed a lot of oxygen, and now he felt a slight feeling of hypoxia. No. I have to find a way. At this time, we can't despair. Jia Yan moved away from the meteorite behind him and found that his back was leaning against the meteorite for a period of time. He was almost frozen, and this was because his body itself had an extremely high temperature. And it has extremely strong temperature resistance. If he hadn't crashed into the meteorite while wearing flames, he might have been lying on the surface of the meteorite too cold to move. Why are they so cold? I don't feel much like this in space. Jia Yan was extremely curious, but this was not the time for him to wonder about this. In fact, for Jia Yan, who doesn't know much about astronomy, this may seem difficult to understand, but the reason is simple. That is, in a vacuum environment, there is no such thing as temperature. But if the object itself has a temperature, then if it is in a pure vacuum, it will always maintain the original temperature and cannot be lowered. But in fact, there is a vacuum in the universe. It's just that in theory, it's a vacuum, and they also contain a little bit of matter. But for scientists on Earth, this matter can be ignored because it's too little. However, it is these very small amounts of matter that make up the current universe bit by bit. Even many stars are composed of these very small amounts of matter. However, this matter involves more complex astronomy, so it will not be mentioned here. Since space also contains a certain amount of matter, heat is conducted through matter. Therefore, if matter in the universe is not close to some sources such as stars or other heat sources, it will often reduce its temperature to a limit temperature. Just like the meteorite in front of us, it should be the decomposed fragments of a large celestial body. If it is really in a pure vacuum, then it should always maintain the temperature at the time of impact or decomposition. But in fact, on over the course of thousands of years, its temperature has been taken away by the matter in space, so its temperature is actually infinitely close to the lowest temperature. Fortunately, this meteorite is actually relatively close to Neptune and relies on a little radiation from the distant Sunday. Therefore, his temperature is not absolute zero, which is minus 273.15 degrees. Otherwise, Jia Yan would have frozen to death as soon as he fell in. Even then, its temperature was about minus 150 degrees. If it weren't for the power of the explosion and Jia Yan's extremely powerful temperature-regulating exoskeleton, he would have suffered from frostbite. Even if I don't freeze to death, what will happen next? Jia Yan looked at the endless darkness ahead. At this time, although he was burning with a raging fire for survival, the reality of the situation made him only see despair. Where is he? In space. Unable to breathe, without gravity, once he leaves an object, he may even be unable to touch anything and suffocate directly. So what if he could fly? In this place, could he still fly back to Earth before he was about to suffocate? No. I must find a way, there must be a way. Jia Yan looked behind him. What he hit before was a small star material with a diameter of about 10 meters. It was basically composed of iron-rich minerals. However, even though it was so hard, it was still hit by Jia Yan. Not only had a clear mark, but also cracks. Look ahead again. There are countless similar small meteorites in front. Some of these meteorites are composed of similar iron elements, and more are ice crystal-like substances. These substances are basically formed after the fragmentation of some comets. It can be seen that, in the past, there was a comet-like celestial body above Neptune, which dismembered here and became the current planetary ring. Because of the thrust of the explosion, Jia Yan was already very far away from the base. Jia Yan looked at it with his almost incomplete compound eyes. Almost 10 kilometers away, there was still flames shooting into the sky, and there seemed to be a hint of aftershocks showing off their power. No, my only hope of survival is the place where the incident happened. There is no way I can find a chance to survive in this place. Jia Yan almost determined the direction of his next efforts at the first sight of the fire over there. He doesn't want to die, and he doesn't know whether his family is alive or dead. If, as De Funi said, the people of the so-called Asta civilization are controlling those metal monsters, they have now driven De Funi out of the earth. It seems that now that there are no worries, will what happens next on Earth turn into a life or death situation? This is what Jia Yan is most worried about. Without his protection, his family will become extremely dangerous. He wants to protect his family. Of course, he also has a bigger dream, which is to become the so-called Starry Sky Beast. Without realizing this wish, how could Jia Yan be willing to die like this? If you don't want to die, how can you not want to die? Isn't it just 10 kilometers? I must have a way to get there. The explosion over there had already exploded like that, but Jia Yan estimated the power and scope of the explosion in his mind. He felt that the so-called Asta signal base over there might still be there. There is no complete destruction. After all, the metal they use is a metal that Jia Yan can't damage even if he attacks with all his front legs. And he could feel that most of the power of the previous explosion was concentrated in the upper part of the base, and there seemed to be no sign of explosion in the lower part. But whether the reality is like this, Jia Yan can't guarantee. After all, at that moment, how could he still have the mind to observe other places? No matter. The situation is like this, I have to firmly believe in my judgment. As long as there is still a possibility of the existence of that base, there is still a chance. That place is designed with partitions. If there are complete living facilities in a certain place, then I'll be saved. Jia Yan forced himself to trust his own judgment at this time. He looked at the meteorite at his feet. It seemed that there was only less than 20 meters away from the ice crystal-like material in front of him. If it was normal, he would have passed by easily and in one step. But now, it was impossible to fly, so at this time, he could only use the power of the meteorite under his feet to determine the correct direction and leap over there. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 289. Jia Yan adjusted his angle. He knew very well that if there was even a slight mistake in his jump at this time, what would greet him would be the endless space behind the ice crystals. So he couldn't make any mistakes at this time, not even a tiny bit. And I can't use too much force. The ice crystal-like thing is only about 5 meters in size. If I jump over it with force, I may not be able to withstand the force of the impact. Jia Yan had a huge headache. If he could jump hard, he wouldn't need to calculate so much. He could just rush forward. It was very simple. But if he couldn't jump hard, he couldn't guarantee his accuracy. This was his first time jumping in space, and God knew what would happen. No matter what, let's fight. Jia Yan has a blazing fire for survival in his eyes. The knife-shaped cuticles on the forefoot don't seem to be very afraid of low-temperature things, and they also have strong temperature insulation properties. This is a good thing. Although Jia Yan now looks like his whole body is in tatters, he has knife-shaped cuticles. There was a slight gap, and the left front foot was even broken, making it impossible to exert force. Perhaps the most serious thing is the midfoot. A pair of midfoot is originally located in the middle of the body and should be the safest joint. However, it is the most severely damaged, even looking like a complete coke. No matter how Jia Yan urged him to move, there was no response. Jia Yan's body was also in extreme pain. He knew that this explosion might have killed half of his life. If he continued to be injured at this time, he might really lose his life. But if he doesn't try hard, will anyone save him? No. Therefore, even if the injury is more serious, he can only pretend that he is not seriously injured and work hard to save himself. The big mosquito adjusted its angle, looked at the ice crystals 20 meters away in front of it, and warned himself slightly, "Relax. It can be done. It can definitely be done." After adjusting his mood a little, his huge body suddenly jumped up in this space environment. A pair of explosive rear feet. Kick hard on the iron meteorite behind. A silent violent bounce. Jia Yan felt his body at this moment. There is no resistance and no sound, and it rushes forward. Suddenly the body flew up. Surrounded by a cosmic vacuum with no sense of security at all, a big mosquito is flying in space. How can this scene be weird? Jia Yan felt even more weird. At this time, he still didn't have much sense of reality in his heart. Below is beautiful blue Neptune. Neptune at this time has a huge eye of the storm. Jia Yan can easily see the area around the eye of the storm as it moves rapidly on the planet. The clouds were attracted piece by piece, and then shattered. Astronomers on Earth would be very excited if they saw this scene. But the big mosquito was not excited at all. He even realized that he had made a huge mistake while jumping. Forget that there is no gravity in this place, and there is no friction. Compared with the Earth's jump, it does not require such a large force at all, and the angle is also higher. After Jia Yan felt the angle of his jump, he was so frightened that he broke into a cold sweat. Too fast. And it's off. Jia Yan looked at the ice crystal substance that was approaching very quickly in front of his body. He was shocked and he quickly grabbed all the long legs he could move towards it. If you can't catch it, you will really fly into the vast universe. That will only lead to death. Must be caught. Jia Yan stretched out his long legs like crazy. He used to think that his length was long enough, but now it seems that it is still far from enough. Jia Yan wishes he had feet 100 meters long. The front feet are not long enough. His knife-shaped horn brushed against the ice crystals. The sharp knife-shaped horn drew long marks on the ice crystals, but it could not stop the body. Jia Yan was almost desperate. His front feet couldn't catch the ice crystal, and the ice crystal was so slippery. His speed was too fast, and he would probably end up slipping even if he caught it. No. I can't give up. He stretched out his remaining middle foot and hind foot crazily. At this time, Jia Yan forgot that his midfoot and hind foot were much longer than his front foot, until his remaining midfoot touched the ice crystal and successfully stopped his body slightly. A little speed, but because the surface of the ice crystal was too slippery, I missed this opportunity. Can be caught. After Jia Yan felt the success of his midfoot, he quickly extended his hind feet, directly covering most of the ice crystal with his pair of hind feet. You know, although the giant mosquito is only about 6 meters long, several of its long legs are longer than its own body length. Especially the hind feet, the length of a single foot is probably more than twice the length of the body. This length can definitely catch most of the ice crystals. Jia Yan found hope again at this time. His front feet and hind feet had completely drifted past the place where the ice crystals were, which meant that he had lost his best position. A pair of hind feet was his only chance. Suddenly, he felt his whole body shake. The hind legs were indeed long enough, and they immediately blocked the ice crystal, blocking his body's forward movement. But because the ice crystals were so slippery, his body was still sliding in other directions. Jia Yan quickly pulled the remaining long legs back together, and even the 6 or 7 meter-sized ice crystals were moved by him. After all, Jia Yan's own weight may be about the same as this ice crystal. All the long legs hugged the ice crystal, and he breathed a sigh of relief. This move was his first jump feat in space. It had a not-so-smooth start, and he had to be more careful next. However, this ice crystal was still extremely cold. Jia Yan estimated that it was at least over 100 degrees below zero. He grabbed it and quickly let go of his long legs. He only used the knife-shaped horn of his right front foot to fix his body. The arrest. The ice crystal tumbled when he hit it, and followed the force of his previous advance and moved forward a lot of distance. But if we continue like this, we will fly into space. Jia Yan quickly cheered up, then saw an opportunity and jumped towards a huge meteorite with a diameter of no less than 50 meters. This time it was more successful. After all, he had already had an experience, so his judgment could be more accurate. Moreover, the 50-meter meteorite had a larger target and was less likely to make mistakes. Jia Yan's next target is these relatively large iron meteorites. He is not prepared to jump over those large numbers of ice crystals. Jumping all the way, he gradually became familiar with the plan of activities in space. Because there is no air, he can easily make any movements. In fact, once you get used to it, you will find that there is still a little fun in this place. However, Jia Yan did not relax at all. Gradually, he began to find signs that the oxygen he needed for his activities was insufficient. Hurry! He looked anxiously at the place not far ahead. It was only a few kilometers, but he found that these few kilometers seemed to be further away than 1,000 kilometers on the Earth. The big mosquito is in a huge crisis. Find bookstore human beings on the Earth are also in a huge crisis. 1 month. The metal monster attacks violently. Their attack opportunities are overwhelming and extremely terrifying. Within a month, metal monsters attacked huge cities on the Earth one after another. The first to be attacked were the capitals of each country. Not only did they destroy Washington, the Star-Spangled Banner, but they also invaded Tokyo, the Japanese country. In the subsequent offensive, they attacked the capital of China, London, Britain, Paris, Germany, Berlin, and Rome, the capital of Funny, etc. These countries in the capital city, within a month, one by one fell into the hands of metal monsters. The metal monsters' offensive is extremely fierce. But in a few months, the people of the Earth have gathered the power of billions of people, and it is not so easy to be destroyed by these monsters. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 290. In the long struggle, humans finally learned how to deal with metal monsters. That is to use your own wisdom. Take advantage of everything you can. At the beginning of the war, it seemed one-sided. However, when the metal monsters attacked Shanghai, another major city besides the capital, and suffered setbacks, this meant that the war had finally reached a turning point. Shanghai, this place has been an extremely eye-catching city long ago. There have been rumors of being attacked here, and a lot of things have happened, but the biggest problem before, and the one that most affects the current security situation, is that she was once protected by the so-called giant mosquito. People at that time knew that the fighting power of those giant mosquitoes was astonishing and terrifying. Thinking that the giant mosquitoes are a race of monsters that can fight metal monsters, and the giant mosquitoes really seemed to be surrounding Shanghai city, countless people flocked to the city. In the world after that, all traces of giant mosquitoes suddenly disappeared. Some people say that the giant mosquitoes were all wiped out by the metal monsters, while others say that the giant mosquitoes went to rest and recuperate. There are even a small number of people who still think that the giant mosquito is just one. He is sleeping now, and when he reappears, he will become even more powerful. No one knows what happened to the giant mosquito, but the people who gathered in Shanghai because of him unexpectedly gained extremely strong fighting power. There are the most elite troops in China on the periphery, and some strange people from scientific research organizations and civilians have gradually gained the ability to fight metal monsters. So in the battle some time ago, the Huaxia kingdom actually defeated the army of 20,000 metal monsters from the future. This was an extremely inspiring battle. In this battle, China showed off their latest weapon. This kind of weapon is gradually showing its war potential in the Chinese nation. It is extremely advanced. His name is Precision Magnetic Shock Bomb. This is a weapon that causes things to resonate. His principle is actually not difficult to understand. The attack weapon launches these bullets, which can then cause huge magnetic shock force on the body of the metal monster. Scientific researchers of China. In previous work, it was discovered that these metal monsters have extremely powerful bodies. It can even withstand temperatures of thousands or even tens of thousands of degrees. It is almost impossible to destroy them with the power of physics, so they went through a long period of research. Finally developed a weapon that can effectively attack metal monsters. This is a precision magnetic shock bomb. This weapon hits metal monsters, if you're lucky. Being able to hit the metal monster's exposed heart, the people on Earth didn't know why the metal monster exposed its vital parts like this, but since the opponent showed its only vital part like this, human beings naturally have no reason to let go. The principle of precision magnetic shock bombs is to attack these key parts of the heart. Perhaps among the 20 bullets that hit the metal monster's body, one can cause the internal power of the metal monster's heart to fail. It was relying on these urgently developed weapons in a previous battle to defend Shanghai. The Chinese army suffered a loss of nearly 150,000 troops, and the general in Shanghai was almost guarded. The world is in chaos and the people are bitter, but the soldiers of these countries still work hard and carry out their mission. They suffered heavy casualties, and stories of heroic blood and tears were passed down and sung. Hundreds of thousands of casualties were exchanged for a sliver of peace. The city of Shanghai attracted the attention and surprise of all mankind. This is the first time that humans have won against a large-scale army of metal monsters since the appearance of metal monsters. War may be thrilling, but no one knows that without those scientific research workers who worked tirelessly on the production line for countless days and nights, there would be no victory this time, and no one knows that without the countless workers, for this great victory, they worked overtime for several months, participated in production, and finally ensured the supply of weapons on the battlefield. No one knows that the soldiers who went to the battlefield still don't know the news about their families. However, most of them did not disobey orders and go out to find their families. Instead, when the country was about to die, they picked up the steel guns in their hands and exercised their own power. Mission: protect the motherland and protect the people. This was a bloody battle that cost a lot of casualties. In many places, all members of the establishment were killed in battle, and there were even countless unknown soldiers who refused to retreat in order to protect a small position on the battlefield. Even if the metal monster attacks, they will take out the grenades in their hands. Even if they cannot die together with the metal monster, they will still make them drop a piece of metal. It's a song and a cry, but it's also sad. The sorrow in the world is all like this. The victory was actually a tragic victory, not to mention death. Even the Shanghai Stock Exchange, which used to be relatively prosperous in the past, has become panic-stricken. Countless refugees encountered metal monsters around the Shanghai Stock Exchange and suffered heavy casualties. But against the background of the outbreak of the war, there was a place like a paradise, just over 100 kilometers away from Shanghai, which was slowly becoming prosperous. This is a small village living in the mountains. This village is in the middle of the battlefield. Perhaps on that day, a small team of metal monsters will destroy this place. But people who come here have no other place to go. Only here can they get a sense of security. So people gather more and more. After detailed counting, the number has reached as many as 300. In fact, places like this are almost everywhere in the land of China. These corners and remote places that used to be deep in the mountains are now like a paradise for those in distress. The mountain roads are difficult to travel, and even metal monsters are still few in number, etc., cannot spread all over China. So much so that in the corner of the war, there is such a place that looks like a paradise. In other words, it is a small oasis of life in the midst of war. Among the 300 people, the first few who stayed here and warmly welcomed the newcomers were a family of 3 and 2 men who looked very powerful. These 5 people seemed to be waiting for someone here. Unfortunately, the person they were waiting for has still not appeared after more than a month. A family of 3 is the Geo family. They have a little daughter named Jiolin at home. Almost every day during the day, apart from completing some work in the village, she would stand outside the village and stare blankly at the sky above her head. Whenever this happens, the Geo family over there sighs helplessly. The days just go on like this. Xiao Yao, are we no longer safe in this place? I don't think those metal monsters will give up attacking Shanghai so easily. We are too close to Shanghai and we shouldn't stay here for a long time. One day, the 2 men who were here first, excluding the Geo family, looked at the girl who was standing on the small slope outside the village again, and discussed the matter in a low voice. In a month, these 2 people have basically recovered from their injuries. They were only injured a few times. Their fighting power is no longer that strong. Maybe they are stronger than ordinary people with firearms, but they can no longer be as strong as tigers before. Got it? Under the bright sky, the girl showed her green and youthful charm, with a slightly baby-fat face. She stood on the small slope facing the wind and looked at the sky above her head. There were white clouds in this sky. Occasionally a bird appears in the white clouds. When these birds appear, the girl is often happy for a moment, but what often greets her is disappointment later. The person she was waiting for never showed up. It's been a month. The giant mosquito monster seemed to have disappeared, leaving their family and 2 killers here, and then disappeared. And more humans are appearing here. These people appear out of nowhere, as if emerging from the ground, wandering one by one to find this village that looks like a paradise. No wonder they, in fact, more people, are looking for a similar paradise. This small village with almost no roads is extremely safe in China today, and even in the entire earth. It is impossible for the tentacles of metal monsters to even take care of such a small village. They seem to have a command. They need to wipe out all human metropolises first, and then carefully find the humans with nooks and crannies and kill them all. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 291. Their numbers are insufficient even to strangle those cities, and they have no time to deal with the humans in these small villages. The fleeing humans who slowly understood this naturally stopped in these small villages. There are actually quite a lot of scattered people living there. Nowadays, these small villages almost all have a trace of contact. They communicate with each other and serve as horns to each other. When one party is in trouble, all directions support it. There was a little bit of anger. But the 2 men who first settled in this village already wanted to leave. They were ordered to treat the 3 members of the Geo family, but now they can't contact the so-called seniors. They didn't know what the relationship was between the giant mosquito monster and their seniors, but they just thought they must be related. They couldn't contact their seniors at this time, so naturally the giant mosquitoes wouldn't take care of the 3 people of the Geo family. They were here in troubled times. I want to get a backer. But there has been no news for a month. I don't know what happened to the seniors. Without the care of their seniors, the Geo family would actually be no different from ordinary refugees. So there is no reason for them to stay here. The man wearing glasses looked at the girl in the distance. This girl's cute little face was a beautiful sight in this mountain village-like area. Some boys of similar age were already attracted to her and wanted to get close to her. If they leave, the Geo family may be able to live well here if they find a good in-laws. So he was a little doubtful. Should I go or not? In fact, they have done enough, and they have done their best to leave the Geo family. Even if the senior appears again in the future, he is confident that the senior will not blame anything. Only. There have been ups and downs along the way. Is it really right to leave like this? Even if they leave, where will they go? Where can I go? The man wearing glasses also raised his head, looking at the view of the sky. Their ammunition is in a month's time. Almost exhausted, some of them were shot at those people who had evil intentions, and some were shot into the sky. Shock Xiao Xiao and maintain the law and order of this village. He actually doesn't think so. If these two people who are in charge leave, this village will remain so stable. But there is no reason to stay, so should we leave or not? Metal Monster. At the moment when neither of them could make a decision, the girl standing on the uphill suddenly exclaimed. The expressions of the two people suddenly changed. Less than a kilometer away, a metal monster, perhaps serving as a pathfinder, was swaying towards this small village deep in the mountains. Climb up slowly. He only has one. Before long, the whole village of men. They are all gathered together. We have a chance to defeat a metal monster, please remember. If it falls into the trap we designed, don't go there because it's too dangerous. Just two of us go there and shoot them. The young man with beard and glasses stood in the middle of the crowd and said to all the men. Among the men gathered at this time, Jia's father was also among them. There were only more than 70 strong men in this village. Jia's father also belonged to this group in age, so he naturally needed to go to war. Understood. After everyone agreed, more than 70 people, although they didn't have many weapons, still headed towards the metal monster. One battle, allure. Explosions kept ringing. When everyone returned, there were more than 70 people, and only less than 30 were left. It's just a metal monster. Humans even have many traps and weapons, but under the attack of a metal monster, they still suffer huge casualties. The broken body of the metal monster that everyone carried seemed to have been injured by a huge bomb, but if it hadn't accidentally hit the heart, which is the core part of the metal monster, it is unknown whether it would have stopped functioning. The two killer men in front of everyone had more injuries on their bodies. As for Jia's father, Jia Shen, it seems that he is not damaged at all, and that's right. In this team, he is always treated differently, because everyone knows that he is a friend of the two killers who seem to be the talk of the village. Dad, the girl threw herself into her father's arms. The same goes for the others, each finding their returning family members, but there are still most of the men in the team who will never come back. For a time, there were constant crying and wailing in the small village. In the end, the two killers chose to stay in this place. Perhaps they knew that when they made this choice, they no longer fulfilled their promise to Changwen, but became their own true intentions. From then on, they may abandon their identity as killers and become members and leaders of this small village. They can lead this small village to gain both prosperity and loss. They don't have their own conclusion as to whether their choice is right or wrong. Perhaps only time will tell. In the vacuum of the universe, the stars are dim. Even the distant sun, from here, is just a small point of light that is slightly brighter than other stars. Loneliness, loneliness, sadness, pain. It seems that all these emotions seem so pale in the face of such a deep and vast space world. The background behind it is the light blue Neptune, which is an extremely beautiful planet on the surface. It has an area that far exceeds that of the Earth, but it is a gas planet and cannot accommodate people. Even within this gas planet, the temperature can reach several thousand degrees, and things can be completely scorched and melted in an instant. Extremely scary. A huge creature with a body of 6 meters long was jumping gently on the background facing the planet. Even though his body is extremely terrifying, in the vast space and in front of the unknown Neptune, he still looks like an ant. But compared to ordinary ants, this big mosquito has a certain ability to survive. He has been holding his breath for an hour in space. Although a big mosquito can last for a long time without breathing, it is still almost unbearable. At this time, his compound eyes had a shimmering luster, and something like a stream of light appeared in his compound eyes. Not far away in front of you is the burning flame. This flame is definitely not an ordinary flame, but a flame that can burn in space. Jia Yan's compound eyes reflected the light. Even though his body couldn't help but want to breathe, he still closed his breath, encouraged himself, twisted his body around, and held onto a huge piece of metal. At this time, he was located 100 meters away from the blazing flames. There was no trace of meteorites or ice crystals in this area, but the previous base exploded and the things inside the base were thrown towards the outside world, so this huge piece of metal, in the final throw, it came to this area 100 meters away and stopped. It was the closest thing to the remains of the base. Other things were either pushed far away by the impact of the raging explosion, or were affected by the explosion and burned directly into a coke-like existence. It can be said that Jia Yan worked hard to finally get here. There were several crises along the way. Once, he even missed his previous jump goal. Fortunately, there was a huge meteorite floating in the air. He seized the opportunity and used his back foot to secure it. He locked it up and was spared. It was a difficult journey, but he relied on his strong belief in survival to survive until now. After a series of jumps, as he gradually became familiar with the gravity-free state of the universe, he finally arrived at the ruins of the base, only a few hundred meters away. There is still a raging flame burning there, but the flame has shown signs of stopping. There is really no fire in the area below. Bless this flame, stop it quickly before I lose my breath. Jia Yan looked at the ruins where the blazing flames were gradually extinguishing, and he felt a glimmer of hope for survival in his heart. But at this time, the uncontrollable biological instinct of breathing and oxygen was appearing crazily in his body. If he doesn't breathe as soon as possible, his body will probably die from lack of oxygen. Everything before has been solved, and many obstacles have even been overcome. In this space, he came to the place near the place of survival. If he just watched hope right in front of his eyes, but had no choice but to die, he didn't want to feel this way. Jia Yan felt a little dizzy. His body, which was deprived of oxygen, was already sending out warnings. It seemed that it was not impossible for him to faint in the next moment.